I know it's first thing in the morning, so we'll wait maybe 2 or 3 more minutes to get started.
2 or 3 more minutes.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. We don't have many people here, but that's okay. This is session 2, so hopefully most of you made it to a session 1 training. If not, that's okay. We're going to be having several follow-up, makeup sessions, and if you have further questions, we can go further into detail about anything. So today, we are going to be talking about these items here. We're going to be talking about, so the other day with the session 1 training, we talked about making an invoice, and that's how we will be billing customers in the new Oracle Cloud system. So today we're going to talk about collecting the money on the invoices that we've created already. So does anybody have any unresolved questions or concerns about anything that we talked about previously that you need answers on? No. Okay. So we will go ahead and get started then. The other day in session 1, we generally lived in the receivables area and billing. Today, the things that we're going to be talking about when we're collecting money are going to be in receivables and then accounts receivable. So you still log into the Oracle Cloud webpage, same as before. It takes you to your
They're
screen,
gonna have to leave, right?
and we've got receivables and then accounts receivable. So this is where we're going to be spending our time when we are collecting money on invoices that customers are paying. So the first thing we're talking about is creating a standard receipt and applying it to an invoice. So this is an invoice that you've already created in the billing section. And now the customer has sent in the payment and it needs to be collected against that invoice. So we come in here to the accounts receivable page. We're going to use this task icon on the right-hand side, and we will select Create Receipt. And this is where you come to find the invoice that you're going to pay, and you're going to enter the payment on the invoice. So like I said, you've already made this invoice. You may have made it 2 weeks ago and sent it out to a customer, or if you were not sure how much they would be paying, or if you haven't entered it in, you might have created this invoice 5 minutes ago. But whenever you're receiving money, you're gonna need to have an invoice to pay. So if somebody, I'm trying to think of different examples. If somebody comes in and says, I want a permit for um, to block off this area of the street, or I need I need to rent the room at Coolidge Park, the carousel room. You will create an invoice for that. Then you come in here to pay. You're going to create your receipt. It autofills. This is a standard receipt. Here is a defaults the City of Chattanooga business unit. Then you will select the receipt method. How are they paying? And we'll say that they're writing a check for this. The entered amount will be $400. That's what they gave you. You will need to create a receipt number. So you probably want to have some type of method for doing this. And I believe it is going to be up to each department individually what receipt, how you want to create the receipt numbers. So you might want to have a receipt that is tied to the customer who's paying. You might want to have the receipt that is based on the invoice number that they're paying. We don't have a specific way to do it at this point. If that changes, we'll let you know. So this will be receipt number 2. And the bank information down here in the center section here, this is already defaulted to say which bank it's being paid into. And this is where in the customer section further down, this is the section where we say who it is who's paying. And I will go ahead and just enter in a account number. And I will search for a receipt, an open receivable. So this is something that needs to be paid by this customer. And it pulls up these 5 different options. So these are all things that this particular customer needs to pay. And I will select the one that they are paying on. I'll just highlight it there, say add. Now this invoice is for $500 and we only are paying $400, and that's okay. If you need to change the amount that you're paying, you can do that. So when I clicked add here, you can see even though it's grayed out because I have a different window open, it is down here at the bottom. It tells you the transaction that has been added to this receipt. So I'm done. I'm paying $400 right here, and this is the receivable that I'm paying against. And I will submit up here in the top right, hit the little drop down next to submit, and auto apply now. And it's giving me a warning saying that you're not paying enough to pay off this full invoice, and that's okay. I'm aware of that, so I'll just say okay. And we're done. It gives me this recommendation here in the center of the screen. It's telling me that they still owe money on that invoice, and that's fine. We already knew that, so we don't have to worry about that. And that is it. We have created a receipt and we applied it to the invoice. So it's a pretty simple process. You just search for the invoice, enter the payment information, and apply it to the invoice. So our invoice is paid. Does anybody have questions about that before we continue? Okay. Next thing we're going to talk about is creating a miscellaneous receipt. We had a lot of discussion about what would be the best way to do this because this is the situation that is going to be encountered by library, uh, golf course, any department that is collecting money uh, on a daily basis, or not daily, but frequently. The money comes from a lot of different people who are paying amounts, and it's all combined into one daily deposit. We don't know these customers. There's no reason for us to track the customers, so we don't have to create a customer for them in the system every time they make a payment, because it's just too many. So a miscellaneous receipt will be the way that we collect money for many payers at one time, customers who were not saved in the system. So what we've decided to do um, in the training manual, there are instructions for creating a miscellaneous receipt, and that is not what we are going to use. We go live to reflect the correct procedure that we're going to be using. The way it's going to work is that any department that where they're collecting money from many customers and we're not tracking the customers, we're not creating customers for them in Oracle Cloud. You will have, for example, for the library, you will have a customer set up in Oracle Cloud that is called miscellaneous receipt for the library. So you will use your library miscellaneous receipt to create your invoice that has many lines with a full distribution on it, that shows. So this process will need to happen every day. You'll create an invoice for the day. Instead of creating a collection report, you're going to create an invoice for this. And so on your invoice, it will list all of the different memo lines that you use that are currently on your collection report, and it'll show exactly the distribution of how the funds should be allotted. So when we're creating a miscellaneous receipt to pay a miscellaneous invoice, it's actually going to be the same process as creating a standard receipt. We're just going to select a customer that is called miscellaneous receipt for library, for example. So this is confusing, and I apologize for not having printed training material for you for this, but we will get it to you shortly. So if we're going to create a miscellaneous receipt. We're going to the same thing. I'll go back out so you can remember exactly where it is. Up from the home screen, click on receivables, accounts receivable, come over on the right to the task icon and select create receipt. This brings us back to our receipt page here. So we are again going to be using a standard receipt. There is an option here for miscellaneous receipt, and that's the way that it shows in the training manual, but we are going to be using a standard receipt. Receipt method, this is going to be a cash or check transaction. Receipt number, just create whatever works for your department. And I can actually search for the invoice before I enter the amount. So if I've just created it and I don't remember the amount, but I know that I'm paying the whole thing, I will just type in here MISC receipt. Here are the two miscellaneous receipt customers that we have set up at this point. There's one for golf, there's one for library. We'll probably be adding more, but this is what we have set up at this point. And I'm going to be paying a library receipt that I've created. So I'll highlight that and say okay. And then I'm going to search for open receivables. Search. And this shows me 3 different miscellaneous receipts that have been created that I need to pay. And I'm going to pay the middle one here, that's $906.50. So I'll select it and I'll say add. It has been added down here. You can see in the background at the bottom. So I'm done with this screen. And then I'll confirm in my entered amount at the top in the center, I'm paying the full amount, so $906.50. And I will use the drop down up in the top right by submit and create another, but I'm going to pick submit and auto apply now. And that is all there is to it. It's going to be a little bit more complicated to make an invoice for a miscellaneous customer, for golf, library, whoever else runs into this situation. When you're creating the invoice, it will have many lines instead of just having 1 or 2 like we showed in our example in session 1 training. And we will, if this is a situation that applies to you, we will have further sessions of training, and we'll walk through that together to make sure that you know how to add all of your different memo lines and confirm that the accounts that you're using for your distribution are the correct accounts. So does anybody have any questions at this point before we continue?
Question in the chart. So,
Sorry?
Should we use the same receipt number if we have multiple checks we are depositing, even if they are different account numbers? Like if customer is different, and then it system will allow if the same number, but for the same customer it will not allow the same check number. And another question is, do we need to make a copy of the check to add to the receipt? Yes, we can do that, and we can attach the copy of the check, and we can attach. Is it clear, Gina? Gina, how you can pronounce her name? Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. One other thing that I want to add is that, correct me if I'm wrong, Mahesh, but For each receipt, you can only have one payment method. So cash and check is one payment method. ACH is one payment method. So if you have multiple cash and check deposits, that can be on one invoice. If you have multiple ACH transactions, that can be on one invoice, but you can't have cash and check on the same invoice as ACH. So to use the library, for example, you have a cash and check deposit that is made at the bank, and you have an ACH, several ACHs that come to you. So on your collection report in our current process, you have been creating one collection report that shows your all of the ACHs and your bank deposit from cash and checks, and then it shows the distribution for both of those combined, both of those payment methods combined. With this new process, you will have to do two separate receipts, two separate invoices for this. Actually, two separate receipts, not invoices. You can create one invoice and make a receipt with your cash and check deposit, and then you can make a second receipt to pay your ACH amount. And as long as the total comes out um, matching the amount on the invoice, you're fine. That's correct, right, Mahesh? Yeah, that's correct. So what if you made a receipt and you realize that you did it wrong? You made a mistake. That's okay. All you have to do is reverse it. So starting on the home page, we're going back to receivables, and we'll go to accounts receivable. And the task icon on the right side, I'm going to select manage receipts. Here, we're going to search for the receipt that we need to reverse. And there are several different ways that you can search for it. City of Chattanooga is the business unit. You can search by the receipt number if you know what it is. You can search for the customer if you know what that is. Account number, any of these options you can use to search. Just pick one, and I'll go ahead and just pick to yesterday's date, because I remember that I made a mistake on something that I entered yesterday. So I will search, and here are the 4 receipts that I entered yesterday. And let's see, the one that I need to reverse is this top one here. I'm going to select that one. On the upper right section next to actions, I click this drop down here and I will click reverse. A new window pops open and it is asking me, why am I reversing this? So I'm going to say that this was actually insufficient funds. So the customer paid with a check and then the check bounced. So that's my category. The reason is also insufficient funds in this case. I can put in any additional comments if there's anything that I need to record. Additional notes that you need to enter, and then you just select reverse. And I forgot to mention it does default to today's date. If you need to change that, you can do it. And that is it. Here it shows the status is reversed. So that receipt that I just created yesterday has been reversed. And then when I come back out here to my receipt, these are the receipts that were entered yesterday. On the stats for this one, it shows that it is reversed. So that was successful. Any questions about that process? Okay. Next thing on our agenda is creating a receipt write-off. So for example, if somebody makes a partial payment and we decide that we're not going to collect the remaining amount for some reason, this is the process we'll use to write off the remaining amount of the invoice. It's probably not something you're going to be using very often, but we'll go ahead and show how to do it in case you find yourself in that situation. Going back out to the home screen, we'll go to receivables and accounts receivable again. We'll go to the task icon on the right side, and we will select manage receipts. Again, this is the same screen we just saw. This is where we will search for the invoice that we're going to write off a portion of. I'm going to select yesterday's date to search by again. And on this bottom transaction here, you'll see that I only made a partial payment towards this invoice. So for whatever reason, this remaining amount is not going to be collected. So I need to write it off so that we know it is not collectible. So I'll click on the receipt number to open this one. And it shows that I have paid $500 of it. Oh, I actually have written off $500 of it. I was working on this yesterday. So down here in the receipt details section, see application, that's where we want to be. We'll click the drop down arrow next to actions, and we'll go to the bottom option, which is more. We're going to create a write-off. And I'm going to write off the remaining amount of this invoice because something happened and we are, the mayor told us that we don't want to collect this money actually. So I'm going to type in the wrong amount of this invoice, which I see here is 3775.50. And it's giving me an error saying that I don't have approval to do something that high. Let's see if it works anyway. Write off. No, it's not going to let me. So we'll do $500 because that's how much I'm allowed to do. And say okay. Oh, I've already done $500, so it's not going to let me do it again. Cool. Okay, so you can do up to your approval limit, and if you need somebody with a higher limit, you can contact somebody here in Treasury, Tanikia, Brian. Those people have higher limits. So if this needs to be done and you've reached your limit or you have no limit, that's okay. You'll just contact one of us and we will be able to approve a write-off on there. I'll go ahead and use this other one as an example so you can see what it looks like. This one here, the balance is 974.26. I'm not gonna use that one because it has already been paid. Sorry. Let's try to find a different one that I can do a write-off on. So this top one here, receipt number 2. I'm gonna write off a portion of this one. So this is showing that the invoice is for $400. It hasn't been paid yet, it's unapplied. So I'll come down here to the receipt details, go to actions, more, and create a write-off. Here's where I'll enter, I'm writing off $200 of it. And I'll say okay. And now it shows me that I have written off the $200. And I will save and close. And now I can see if I look at this receipt summary here, it shows that there's only an unapplied amount of $200. So I have successfully written off 200 of the $400. You guys have questions about that? So the last thing on our agenda today is creating a receipt remittance batch. Mahesh,
those DLs defined, and then there is a forwarding rule that is happening to that single.
Sorry, Lindsay, you're asking something to me?
can you please describe again this create receipt remittance batch? You told me this is used to generate a remittance slip for cash and check payments.
Yeah,
that
I
go-
can explain you further. Like, so for example, departments got some cash or checks from the customers. So every day
Mhm.
you will send those cash and checks to the bank, right? So that process is called remittance process. You are sending the cash and checks to the bank. So normally we used to call it remittance, and in Oracle we used to call it a remittance batch. So you can add whatever the receipts for that day in that remittance batch, and you can generate one remittance slip. And while sending this cash and check, you can provide this particular remittance slip, so that whatever the remittance number they can provide in the statement, so that it will help us to automatically reconcile in the cash management. Is that clear now?
So why is that necessary instead of just using a deposit slip like we've been
No, no, it's
using?
not. It's not mandatory. Like, is it as a functionality we have? So whether we can use or we can skip that process, that is fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to need
Sure.
to do
Yeah.
that.
Then it's fine. We can skip the remittance process. Yeah. That's
Okay,
what I replied, right? If you don't want to provide the training on this remittance, we can skip that.
yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't skipping anything important.
Sure.
Um, okay, so in that case, there's nothing further on our agenda for today. Does anybody have questions, concerns about processes that we've talked about today or processes we've talked about in session 1? Again, if you missed a session 1, that's okay. There will be plenty of opportunities for more training. Um, anyone have anything to add? No? Okay. Well, I'll give you your time back. If you have questions, if you think of anything later on in the day, please reach out to me by email or phone. My contact information is right here on the screen if you need to make a note of it if you don't have it. Please get in touch with us with anything that you think of down the road. And thank you guys so much for your time today.